You're tuned to KRCB FM Windsor, Santa Rosa. Brian here with you, and I'm joined in the studio, and I'm so thrilled, Mr. Steve Earle. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
First of all, thanks a lot for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, we've been running around radio stations that actually play music and record stores that still sell records all over the country, from Boston all the way across to Portland, Oregon, then back to Texas, and then back to the West Coast again. And we're at Amoeba in the city in San Francisco tonight. We were in the one in L.A. yesterday, and we're going up to the last day of this is Seattle tomorrow, and then I go back to New York and Camp Copperhead, my songwriting camp.
That's right.
The tour actually starts the first weekend in July in Texas.
Yeah, after the camp, the songwriting camp.
Yep, soon camp's over with.
How long have you been doing Copperhead Camp?
This is fourth year.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Who else is going to be showing up to help?
This year, Dar Williams and Jackie Green.
Nice. Jackie's a good friend.
Yeah, he's really good, man.
Yeah.
He's great.
So You Wannabe An Outlaw. This is a really good record.
Thanks. I'm proud of it.
We're playing it a lot. There's things, you kind of went into this with a vision.
Yeah, it was like sort of a couple of things. One was, kind of reconnecting to the moment I came into Nashville, because it was like another 12 years before I got to make a record. But I was there. I was at the Dripping Springs reunion in Texas. I was at the first 4th of July picnic. And then I moved to Nashville. And, I could have stayed in Austin, but I made the choice of going to Nashville for a lot of reasons. And weather too good, girls too pretty, dope too cheap. I just knew I wouldn't get anything done there. So I went to Nashville. And it's just... that moment that it was sort of the inmates running the asylum in country music for a minute there, and a lot of great records got made, and I was sort of around in the back rooms while that was going on. It was sort of like a salon. It was like a scene that was built around a couple of scenes. One around Guy Clark that I was directly a part of, and there was another little scene around John Hartford, who had lived there 3 or 4 years before, which was like, all of the long-hair bluegrass players were hanging out at John's place. So it was a pretty exciting time to be there.
You played in Guy Clark's band for a while, didn't you?
I did for a minute. I wasn't that great a bass player, but, I got the gig, and I celebrated my 21st birthday playing bass for Guy at Castle Creek in Austin, and right after Old Number One came out.
I played something off the Old Number One today.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. Rita Blue.
I love it. That's actually the demo, because they never could beat the track when they were actually trying to make a record. That's like that's Gary B. White on bass, who wrote "I Think I'm Gonna Love You" for a long, long time. He was an old friend of Guy's from Houston, and Dick Feller, that fingerstyle guitar. That's Dick Feller.
Yeah. In fact, today's Kris Kristofferson's 81st birthday.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of hard to believe. That's like it's one of my favorite things. That I got in I'm in a Kris Kristofferson song. It's one of the things I'm proudest of in the world. So.
We should both only look as good as he does at 81.
Yeah, he looks great. It's funny. I've started going to Maui at Christmas the last few years. I'd never been to Hawaii until my manager for my 60th birthday took me to Maui to meet Ram Dass, and it was Ram Dass and Willie Nelson live about 13 miles apart in Maui, and then Kris is on the other side of the island, and. Somebody told me, so I went again the next year, and then I went to get Willie's vocal on this record, on the title track, because he was already gone by the time we started recording. He goes every year, and I'm going this Christmas Day. John Henry, my son, and I are headed out. But it's somebody asked me, I said, why don't you go to the Big Island? Maui's so that's so kind of over with on. Ram Dass, Willie Nelson, Kris Kristofferson.
Yeah.
Maui's okay with me.
Yeah, no kidding. Does Woody Harrelson still live there?
Huh?
Woody Harrelson, is he still?
Yeah, I think he's around. I don't know him, but I understand he's still, around that island somewhere part of the time.
Yeah. He gave up pot, so I guess he doesn't hang out with Willie as much.
I don't know. I don't. That's. I wouldn't comment on that one way or the other if I knew. So.
You talked about Ram Dass. One thing that I like about this record, you're well known for your activism. And this particular time in our history, I would think that you could come out with an album that could be very angry.
I could, but I didn't know this was going to happen when I wrote these songs.
Yeah. And
the record was recorded in December. I thought, I supported Bernie Sanders until he was no longer in the race. I voted for Hillary Clinton, and I really firmly believe the vote for anybody else was a vote for Donald Trump, and so I voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And I know people that wanted to believe otherwise, but that's simply, in my opinion, not the way our system works. And it's a lot of what happened.
Yeah.
It's one of many things that formed the perfect storm that gave us this nightmare. And so I knew the election happened and we made the record in December. And I thought about retooling the record, writing 3 or 4 more songs, but I decided this was something personal and something musical I wanted to say, and I decided to just let this record be what it was. And the next record, in the process of working up to this record, I had the best band I've ever had. So the next record will probably be just as country as this one, and way more political, which might be interesting. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Well, this is a great one. So You Wanna Be an Outlaw. You got Willie on here. I actually just got an email from Chris and Eleanor thanking me for playing their record.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I saw them yesterday at Amoeba in L.A. I played the Amoeba store there yesterday, and they came. They live in L.A., so they came by.
Yeah, sweet folks. News from Colorado. It sounds like one of John Prine's best songs.
Oh, thanks. That song's actually my niece, Emmylou Harris, and Allison started that song. And I wanted to sing it, and it wasn't getting finished, so I just helped them finish it. And I'm really proud of it. I just wanted to sing it. I'm really proud of the record. So.
Should we play it?
Sure.
From the new album, So You Wanna Be an Outlaw, Steve Earle, this is News from Colorado on KRCB. News from Colorado, Steve Earle from the new one, So You Wanna Be an Outlaw. Steve joins us in the studio. I've been reading some of the stuff you've been talking about as you've been doing press for this record, and you talk about that you're a romantic.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say you've been married 7 times. Are you still a hopeful romantic?
I am being romantic. It's a term that applies to everything. Like my politics, for instance, are even romantic. My politics are about the way the world should be, not about the way that it is. And that's kind of. But I don't. Maybe I think I'm done, but you never know. And
never say never.
It's one of those things, and I like sitting where I want to at the movies, and it doesn't suck to be single in New York City. So there's there's things about it. I can watch all of the baseball that I want, and it's so there's advantages to it, and I just, I never rule anything out, but I'm kind of, I'm obviously bad at it. I mean, but I just wanted what my parents had. My parents were together till my dad passed away 8 years ago, and I wanted what Guy and Susanna had, and I just, I still believe in it, but that doesn't necessarily, and I operated on the idea that there's somebody out there for everybody. Maybe there's not, it could be that that's not true.
Well, it's a bullet that I've managed to dodge my whole life, so you've made up for both of us.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things. I kind of I use the term "dodged a bullet" to refer to a situation that I almost got in recently, and it got into print, and I got in trouble for it. So you have to be careful about saying things. Using the term "bullet" when you're referring to a relationship evidently is not okay.
Yeah. So. You brought your guitar. Do you want to do a tune for us?
Sure. Well, since we're talking about that stuff, let's do this, because this is kind of about that. But there's a girl up on the mountain I once knew. Let her go, and now I'm sad and blue. Sometimes late at night I pray she'll come down to me someday, but the girl up on the mountain never knew. So she gave herself to someone else back then. Thought I'd never see her face again. found a new love of my own. Broke my heart, now she's gone, but the girl up on the mountain still remains. Wish I may, wish I might, on every star I see tonight, a million diamonds up above, shine down on the one I love. The poets have 1,000 tales to tell about a love that didn't work out well. I sleep alright at night, 'cause in my dreams I hold her tight, but the girl up on the mountains up there still. Oh, and I love her now, guess I always will.
Steve Earle. You know, from that song, I kind of think you still are kind of a hopeful romantic. Not hopeless,
Maybe.
hopeful.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Making the rounds. He's making the rounds to promote this new record, So You Want to Be an Outlaw. Interesting thing I read in the bio about how when you were incarcerated, you got a message from Waylon.
Yeah, it's in the liner notes, actually. I was only 3 people besides my folks wrote me when I was locked up. Johnny, I got one letter from Johnny Cash. I got one from Emmylou Harris, and I got it was really just it wasn't a letter. It was just a picture he sent in an envelope. There's a photograph back when people still had those someplace besides their phones, and of him at a fair someplace playing, and he had playing that Telecaster and with a bright yellow bandana around his right wrist, and that's kind of a thing I always do. It started a long time ago, and I'm kind of superstitious about it. I always wear a bandana on my wrist. It's a sweatband. It keeps my bracelets from scratching my guitar. It does a lot of things, but and it just said on the back, I'm wearing the bandana for you, which is a big deal. It was because I was just at that moment where I was trying to figure out whether I was going to live or die, and it really is that disease. You do reach a point where you choose, and if you don't choose, to live, then where I was, you die. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And I was right at that point, when I got that message and a few other messages from a few other people, and some stuff that sort of came from inside the program, that it all sort of lined up and made it feel like maybe I could do this. Yeah.
Well, when I look at a record like this, I'm damn glad you're still here.
Well, beats the alternative.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, and I like my job, and I'm lucky. You got to make records, I'm lucky I write a lot, and because you kind of have to make a record to turn around and go back out on the road and play the same places that you played a year and a half ago, which is really in the music business that I'm in, really kind of the only way you have to make a living anymore.
Well, it's changed so much since you first started.
I didn't know what to tell Justin when he started out, because it was a totally different music business by the time he started, and I think it's a different music business than he started in now, and nobody knows where it's going to land. People that say they do, or when somebody tells me they know what's happening next in the music business, I just stop listening to them.
Yeah.
I think it's all the smartest people I know don't know, don't have any idea.
Do you write all the time?
Pretty much. I mean, I don't, I have to, sometimes I need to, sort of shut down, watch my stories on HBO and Showtime, read the Harry Potter books and, that kind of stuff. But I don't, I read I read quite a bit, and I'm not reading very much right now because I'm trying to finish my book. And so when I read, it's a memoir is a miserable thing to do because
That's I'm going to ask this time you're writing a memoir.
It's just I've been working on it for a while, but it's way overdue. But I've got to go. I'm going to try to finish it before the end of the year because I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just waking up in the morning every day and writing about you. Look, the novel and the short stories. I didn't have any idea that my like cross-dressing like ex-football player prostitute was gonna shoot my priest until the night before it happened when I was writing my book. But this is writing about me, so I know what I did next.
Yeah.
So it's kind of boring when it gets right down to it. There's no surprises in it. So.
Do you need a quiet place to write, or does it just come to you whenever it comes to you?
I have a 7-year-old, so quiet's hard to come by. It doesn't have to be super quiet. I don't know. I mean, I had this epiphany because I went away to Barcelona to write, and I've written in places where I didn't understand the language, and it's great for a while when you know what you're going to write. But when you're looking for new material, you're living in a vacuum, and a lot of writing is what you overhear. I don't understand people that ride around in the subway in New York with earbuds in. You're missing the songs, man.
Oh, yeah.
And it's,
and the rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely. Trains are great for that. So I love New York City, and I love, I live in an old railroad, they call it. It's and originally the bedroom was in the middle on those railroads, but mine has been turned into kind of a loft. But what that does is it pushes the bedroom out into the front of the building, and I live on Bleecker Street.
Yeah.
So, I sit there, I go to sleep listening to, really, really drunk guys from New Jersey that still think the NYU girls are going to talk to them, going off on each other when the bars close every night. And I can sleep through it. I can sleep sitting straight up in a chair. It's a skill set in my business to be able to sleep pretty much anywhere and through anything. So I took a nap on stage at Kate Wolf in between sets several years ago, just sat there in a chair and went to sleep. Took about a half an hour nap.
One time when I was a kid, about 16 years old, it was our family's last family vacation. And so one of us always had to sleep in a roll-away bed. And we were in Washington, D.C., and I woke up to my whole family standing around laughing. The bed had folded up, and I was still in it and fast asleep.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
It's like, that's like Three Stooges stuff. That's cool.
Steve Earle live in the studio with us. So You Wannabe An Outlaw, the new one. Just a great record. You collaborated on this record more than you usually do?
Well, I mean, in the sense that there's a couple of guests. There's as far as co-written songs, the News from Colorado is like Emily, my niece, and Allison and I. And then This Is How It Ends, Miranda Lambert and I wrote together. And the rest of it I wrote, but, I wrote the second verse of the title track for Willie Nelson to sing. And then Johnny Bush, when I came up with this Ray Price shuffle, and Johnny Bush was sort of the guy that carried on that tradition, after Ray Price stopped doing it, when the period where as my uncle used to refer to as Ray Price's period when he had too many fiddles. And so Johnny Bush carried that tradition on, and one of my heroes, and it was an honor to get him to come in and sing on the record.
What's the story about when you first met him? I love this story.
Oh, well, when I was just the year before I moved to Nashville, I was playing I was married, so I had a sit-down gig in a restaurant in San Antonio. I'd moved my wife, who was from Houston, back to San Antonio to get away from her parents, basically, and especially her dad, because he hated me. And I played in this restaurant 3 or 4 nights a week, and there was a guy named Joe Voorhees who played piano in Bush's band, but he also was a really good 5-string banjo player, and he'd come sit in with me sometime. And he came to sit in one night, and we were in no condition. I lived in Cibolo, Texas, for one thing, which was about 45 minutes away, and I needed for things to simmer down before I could drive. And we were hungry, and we really weren't in condition to get downtown to Mi Tierra to eat either. So he said, well, Bush is in Vegas, and I got the keys to his condo. And it was about, 5 blocks from where we were. So we went over, and we got into Johnny Bush's house and got in the kitchen. I had a big bowl of Rice Krispies, and I'm sitting there with bananas in it, and high enough to hunt ducks with a rake. So I went straight for the Rice Krispies, and I looked across it, and all of a sudden, all of the color went out of Voorhees' face, and he said, "John," and I turned around, and Johnny Bush was standing there in a bathrobe with a .357 Magnum pointed at the back of my head. And so evidently he wasn't in Vegas, and he'd come home. He'd had a bad run of luck at the blackjack table and come home early, as it turned out. And so it was. And I've got a copy of John's autobiography, which is called Whiskey River Take My Mind. It's a really interesting book about. Those guys were, he and Roger Miller and Willie Nelson were all in Ray Price's band together, and there's some stories from that era. And I just, he signed the book. It said, to Steve, I sure am glad I didn't pull the trigger, John.
Let's take a listen to the title track. What I love about this is you don't know it's Willie Nelson right off. It's like he's singing a little bit out of his comfort zone.
Well, he made it. Well, he made it his before it was over with. Trust me.
But it's a Steve Earle song, not a Willie Nelson song. But you wrote the verse for him, and he sounds great in it.
Yeah.
What a great tune! So You Want to Be an Outlaw, the title track to the new one by Steve Earle. Steve is in the studio with us. As I was saying while the song was on, it sounds like you guys had fun recording that one.
We did. I mean, this band has fun. It's the best band I've ever had, and we got a steel guitar player in the band for the first time in years, and that happened right before this record. New drummer, as of the very end of the Terraplane tour, Will Rigby left after 15 years, and he was replaced by Brad Pemberton for the Australian tour, who's from Nashville. He was in the Cardinals in Ryan Adams' band for 10 years. He's a really great drummer, and it's been a joy to work with him. And he did Australia with us, did the Guitar Town 30th anniversary tour, and then we went straight into the studio to record this. And we picked up a steel player who's from Dallas, lives in Austin. Charlie Sexton told me about him originally, but it turned out Chris and Eleanor had worked with him. He's on their record, which they had just finished before we started ours. And his name's Ricky Ray Jackson, and he's really, really good.
Ricky Ray, is he from Texas or from Nashville?
He's from Dallas originally. He lives in Austin.
Ricky Ray, it sounds like a Texas name.
Yeah, sounds like a steel player.
Yeah. I often say that I wish that when I was 16 years old and started playing guitar, that I wish I started playing pedal steel, because you always got work.
It's a bizarre instrument, man. All you get is turn it over and look at the bottom of it. It's strange. Not anybody can play that instrument. You have to be kind of have a little bit of from another planet thing. It looks like you look at turn it over, look inside, looks like Rube Goldberg threw it up in there, man. It's kind of weird. It's a strange thing.
You want to do one more tune for us?
Yeah, we lost Guy Clark last year, and so this kind of closes the standard version of the record anyway. And the deluxe version of the CD and the vinyl also contains 4 covers, which are 2 Waylon Jennings songs, 2 Willie Nelson songs, 1 Waylon Jennings, and 1 Billy Joe Shaver, and which are all people that without whom this record certainly wouldn't exist, and I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing the way that I do it anyway if it weren't for those people. So, but Guy and Townes Van Zandt were my direct teachers, and Guy was too tough for his own good, and he just it took him he was sick a long time, and he fought, and the last few years of his life he wrote with all these younger writers, and a lot of songs that he would have never written if it hadn't been for sort of feeding off of them, and they learned stuff they would never have learned if they hadn't worked with a Guy. And we had a big wake, and a lot of those folks who I didn't even know showed up, in Nashville at Jim McGuire's studio. And then we took Rodney Crowell and Sean Camp, and some of us loaded up on a tour bus, took Guy's ashes to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to Terry Allen's house. And don't mouth off in front of Terry Allen about what you want done with yourself after you're gone, because it'll happen. And he had told Guy, now we have nobody's word for this,
other than Terry's, yeah.
But Terry said, that Guy wanted to be in the bronze that he created, because that's Terry's day job, and he's a sculptor. So we took Guy to Santa Fe. As far as I know, he's still sitting on Terry's mantle, because bronze takes time. You got to get time at the foundry, and cast and all that stuff. So. That's where he's going to end up eventually. And
any idea what kind of sculpture it's going to be? Will it be a bust of Guy or anything?
He didn't have any idea the last time I talked to Terry. But he's like when we got to Santa Fe, like some people flew in. Emmylou Harris came in. I love it. Got Joe Ely, Jack Ingram, and we played some more songs, and we cried some more. And then when I got home to New York City, I wrote this. Michelangelo. Ain't no trouble where you go. Ain't no pain to burn you blind. Just enough to draw a line. Goodbye, maestro, farewell. Gone to heaven, been to hell. Maybe just New Mexico. Goodbye, Michelangelo. Farewell, my captain, adios. Sail upon the sea of ghosts. Chase the white whale to the end. Bring the story back again. I'm bound to follow you someday. 'Cause you have always shown the way. So we knew where we had to go. Goodbye, Michelangelo. Find you by and by, just like it did before. Saying forever is just goodbye till it comes my time. I won't have to travel blind. Taught me everything I know. Goodbye, Michelangelo.
Steve Earle in the studio, song for Guy Clark. My favorite picture of you. Every time I hear that song and look at the cover of that CD, I choke up.
Which one?
On the one he wrote, my favorite picture of you.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Steve Earle, he's making the rounds to support this new record. So You Wanna Be An Outlaw. He's going to be back at Hardly Strictly this fall. Looking forward to that. Any other West Coast tour dates between now and October?
We're I think that's pretty much. Northern California. There may be something else, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Around the time of Hardly Strictly, because Hardly Strictly's right at the end of the first leg, and then I will be kind of in the area also with. There's a tour called Lampedusa that we did last year, kind of in the eastern half of the country. Lampedusa is an island off the coast of Sicily, and it was myself, Emmylou Harris, and Robert Plant, and the Milk Carton Kids, and Buddy Miller last year. My Patty Griffin was actually supposed to be in that center seat last year, and she was ill, so she couldn't do it. So she and I are committed, and we don't know who else it's going to be yet. But that's going to be we're going to play Portland and Seattle, and L.A. and I think San Francisco, but I'm not sure. But if there's someplace in Northern California, and then we had it gets as far east as Texas this time, and basically it supports the Jesuit refugee services, which have been going on since the boat people era after the Vietnam War, and dealing with refugees on a large scale. And we have a refugee crisis, folks, and of course a lot of them are coming from the Mideast, and those people end up on an island off the coast of Sicily called Lampedusa. So that's what we call the concerts.
Thanks again for coming in.
Thanks.
And keep up the good work on all of the fronts.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye. It's Steve Earle here on KRCB.